Guess what, Rosalie? My family's coming over and you're in charge of hosting them at this fancy restaurant. Can you handle that? Oh, and by the way, do you know how to manage money? You didn't save anything, did you? Rosalie was puzzled. What do you mean? What's mine is yours. So, this restaurant you own. It's mine too. Everything's free. That sounded crazy to Rosalie. Her husband Kyle seemed clueless, thinking he could just invite the family over and not pay. Something wasn't right. Plus, he didn't seem to get it. He was about to land himself in trouble. Kyle, we can't give everything away for free. But don't worry about the money. I know you don't have savings, and I knew you were inviting the family today. So, I already arranged for someone else to pay in advance. Stop lying. I never mentioned inviting the family, and none of them said anything about being billed. My husband insisted, gesturing toward our relatives. His parents, his brother, his wife, and a few others were chatting with a waitress nearby. He smirked and made fun of them while I struggled not to burst out laughing, my lips twitching. I've been getting ready for this day. I'll do my best to entertain them just like you want, I replied, smiling to myself as I listened to him. Our in-laws approached. Hi, Rosalie. We're here to visit today. What a lovely place this is. Everyone seems to be having a great time, they said warmly, their demeanor a sharp contrast to my husband's. Mom, Dad, thanks for coming. Rosalie's happy you're here. Today's on me, my husband said casually, even though he planned to eat for free. He lied effortlessly, not just to his parents, but probably to his brother and other relatives too. He's lied before, but he's so confident he won't get caught because everyone sees him as the perfect son. Rosalie's really been excelling. She took over the restaurant from her late parents and has been running it impressively. It wasn't easy at first, but she turned things around. She's my pride and joy, he boasted to his parents, deliberately praising me, his pride and joy, to deceive them. But in reality, he barely sees me as more than a maid. As he spoke, my in-laws turned to me, nodding in approval. They've always recognized my efforts since the beginning of our marriage. Their kindness shone through their eyes. Meanwhile, my husband subtly changed his expression, silently warning me to keep quiet. Rosalie's been working hard, and Kyle's doing well too. Everything's going smoothly at Brown Trading, right? Your salary's been increasing, hasn't it? They asked. Yeah, that's correct. I'm respected at Brown Trading, and my boss has high hopes for me. I aim to lead my team through actions and results, and I'll keep up the good work, my husband replied confidently. That's our son, all right. Spending $155,000 like that isn't something just anyone can do, his parents remarked proudly, but my husband's expression darkened slightly at that moment. Today, we have 15 relatives dining with us, including my in-laws and brother-in-law's family. It's $11,000 per person, totaling $115,000. I calculated silently, knowing my husband was trying to get it all for free, unaware of the cost. When he realized it was pricier than he thought, he quickly regained composure to avoid exposing his lie. This one's on me, everyone. It's the least I can do. I just got my bonus, so no worries at all. Leave it to me, he declared, puffing up his chest as the in-laws chuckled softly. Checking the time, it was 6:00 p.m., so I guided my husband and in-laws to their reserved seats. The other relatives followed suit. Just as they were settling in, my husband shot me a creepy grin. An hour later, I approached their table in the banquet room. They were enjoying themselves, oblivious to the surroundings. Feel free to order more, everyone. It boosts restaurant sales, and Rosalie will be delighted, so go ahead, my husband encouraged, each word accompanied by a flurry of extra orders. With the banquet meals and additional orders, the bill had surpassed $20,000. Everyone assumed my husband, a corporate elite with a hefty income, was treating them. While some hesitated, my husband seemed to push them to order more. That's when I decided to set the record straight, loud enough for all to hear. Since it's Kyle's treat, I had $60,000 transferred yesterday, so everyone, please enjoy yourselves without holding back, I announced, causing a buzz of surprise among the relatives. $60,000. Classic Kyle, were words of almost admiration that flew around. While the relatives reacted like this, my husband wore a bewildered look, clueless about what was going on. I didn't miss his expression and added a line to start my counterattack. Well, the $60,000 isn't for the food. It's for alimony, actually, I stated, causing puzzled looks among the buzzing relatives. Alimony, Kyle? What's this about alimony? One of them asked. No, I don't know about any alimony. Sometimes Rosalie jokes around, so please don't mind her. Come on, Rosalie, don't upset everyone with jokes like that. My husband tried to brush it off, but he was clearly the most troubled. His face was smiling, but his eyes told a different story. The way he looked at me was terrifying. But it wasn't done. Kyle, you're the one making uncomfortable jokes here. I think it's time the family knew that, right? I said firmly, handing him a piece of paper and a bank book. As he examined them closely, his face turned pale. The alimony is for cheating. Kyle has been unfaithful. He's not the person you all think he is. He can lie and deceive people without a second thought, I revealed. The atmosphere in the banquet room shifted abruptly. The once lively chatter ceased, replaced by an eerie silence. The document I handed to my husband was the original alimony claim, and the bank book showed a record of a $60,000 transfer. Everyone's attention was fixed on my husband and me, and silence lingered for a few seconds. But it was my husband who broke it. How funny, Rosalie. That's quite something. It looks just like a real statement in a bank book, but really, this is going too far. There's no way I would cheat. It seemed like he had shifted back to his usual confident demeanor, but that confidence quickly faded, and I couldn't help but smile. What are you talking about, Kyle? You're the one who's gone too far. Not only cheating, but also trying to bully me into eating for free, lying to all the relatives that it's your treat. That's too much of a joke. Correct yourself quickly, everyone. Don't take Rosalie's words to heart. Without needing to say anything, the relatives seemed unable to believe it outright, and no one spoke up. I didn't react to my husband's words either, just watching his actions closely. Gradually, he started to panic. That's when he tried to get his parents on his side. Dad, Mom, tell her to stop these senseless jokes at a time like this. Ah yes, everyone calm down and listen to me, his dad began. Rosalie isn't making any senseless jokes. She's just stating the facts. It's undeniable that Kyle has been unfaithful, and she's not threatening Rosie. He's trying to get today's meal for free too. What are you two even saying? Are you taking what Rosie said seriously? That's not funny at all, my husband protested, but his parents seemed convinced. The only thing that's not funny is this situation. We've come here knowing everything to confront you, I declared. Yes, I had already confessed everything to my in-laws, revealing how my husband uses his outward kindness to play the dutiful son while behind the scenes, he's up to no good. Even as we waited for our reservation time, he tried to deceive his parents, but they saw through his lies. Enough. I would never deceive everyone. You're ruining the good mood we had, Rosalie. What are you going to do about this? My disclosure and having the in-laws on my side were completely unexpected for him. He visibly started to lose his composure, standing up and glaring at me intensely, as if he might lunge at me any moment. Come on, brother, calm down. Let's sit down and talk this over calmly. Nicholas, you believe me, right? Interjected his brother, my brother-in-law Nicholas, cutting through my husband's angry shouts. Nicholas, busy with his own job, was attending today with his wife Yasmin. I knew Nicholas and my husband had been close since before I started dating him, and he is as gentle and consistently smiling as the in-laws. However, Nicholas's next action would utterly defeat my husband. He pulled a thick envelope out of his bag and handed it to my husband, saying, "You believe me, right, brother?" "How can I believe you when you've been cheating with my wife, Nicholas?" "You what?" My husband's accusation hung heavy in the air as Nicholas handed over the envelope. Inside was a report on the infidelity investigation. It turns out my husband had been cheating with Nicholas's wife, Yasmin. Just before my father-in-law had said, "We've come here knowing everything," and by we, he meant the brother-in-law's family too. And it turns out, I learned about my husband's infidelity thanks to Nicholas. Hesitantly, my husband checked the contents of the envelope, turning pale as a ghost. Inside were numerous photos of him cheating with Yasmin. Pictures of them dining at a fancy restaurant, looking into each other's eyes. There were photos of them being cozy in a car and others of them embracing and kissing in front of a hotel. There's no way he could just say they were just going out. It was indeed a decisive moment, a hellish scene. "Is this a joke? Unbelievable, Kyle did this," were the whispers I heard. The relatives around us were in turmoil, and the banquet hall buzzed in a whole different way. For my husband, it couldn't have gotten any worse. He was completely flustered now. No, wait. This investigation report is fake. The photos must be doctored because I haven't cheated with Yasmin. We didn't cheat, right? he pleaded, trying to enlist Yasmin's support in his last-ditch effort. Immediately after Yasmin, now the center of attention, bowed deeply to the floor in full prostration. "Everyone, I am terribly sorry. I have had an affair with Kyle." Yasmin's confession stunned the room. My husband in particular was visibly shaken. He hadn't anticipated Yasmin fully admitting to the affair. He had been insisting the alimony bill and the bank book were fake, only thinking of himself and taking me for granted. He couldn't have imagined this. Yasmin's earnest apology captivated not only my husband but also the rest of the banquet hall. But it wasn't just my husband who was affected. All the relatives were stunned by Yasmin's admission. As her forehead remained on the floor, she slowly began to speak. "It really was just a fling. Nicholas is a wonderful husband, but, well, it lacked excitement, you might say. Just doing housework and waiting at home for Nicholas to return, I started to feel like my life would forever be the same. And suddenly, I got bored. When I approached Kyle, he was happy to go along." Everyone listened in silence to Yasmin's voice, mixed with regret and reflection. As she raised her head and revealed more truths, I tried to end it immediately, knowing it was wrong. But Kyle got serious about it. He threatened to expose everything if I tried to break it off. I know it sounds like an excuse now, but I am truly sorry. Yasmin's confession left the relatives staring in disbelief at such a lack of morals. Yasmin had initiated the affair, and though she was threatened, it's hard to completely sympathize with her. But she came here today to admit her mistakes and apologize, which is somewhat redeemable. However, my husband tried to escape by lying and making excuses, unaware that he was just tightening the noose around his own neck. He really is a fool, brother. It's all useless. I, Rosalie, and our parents know everything. I'm going to demand alimony from you, and you're going to pay Nicholas. When did you realize? You didn't even do an investigation. You must have been sure, right? Yes, I heard it from someone I truly despise, you, brother. Right, Rosalie? That's right. It wasn't just Yasmin. He had his hands on other women too. What, Rosalie? How much do you know? Just give me a break already. Too bad, Kyle. I know everything, and if anyone should be asking for mercy, it's us. I never thought you'd even make a move on an employee at a restaurant. I continued, then called a woman into the banquet hall. This woman was the waitress who had been talking with the in-laws, Nicholas, Yasmin, and several other relatives while they waited for their reservation time. Turns out, while having an affair with Yasmin, my husband had also been making advances towards this waitress. She had also attended the same school with me back in our student days. Before even consulting Rosalie, who was the restaurant owner, she came to me. Kyle had threatened to destroy your family if you spilled the beans to Rosalie. You're really horrible. I've said it before, but we know everything, brother. All you can do now is admit your guilt and apologize, just like Yasmin did. Kyle, let me ask you something. Why would you deceive Rosalie to carry on with your affairs? From what we can see, Rosalie has been nothing but supportive. She's been managing the restaurant that she inherited from her parents and taking care of home as well. What does she ever do to you? Under the cold stares, my husband flinched at his father-in-law's question. I thought there was no valid excuse for infidelity, but if I had been unconsciously pushing him into a corner, I wanted to reflect on myself too. Awaiting his response, what he said next was shocking. I married Rosalie because I felt sorry for her. Before our marriage, she was struggling to turn the restaurant around with both parents gone. I was the only one she could rely on. I couldn't live without that feeling of superiority. And then what? Rosalie managed to turn it around. The restaurant became popular, and suddenly I found it boring. That's why I thought of dumping her, my husband said, smirking as if he had nothing to lose. Despite already knowing his true nature, a deep disgust welled up from within. It seemed he viewed everyone but himself as mere tools. The cold stares from the relatives quickly turned to pity. A feeling of superiority felt good, got bored, and decided to dump her. Kyle, do you realize what you're saying? You're successful in your big company because Rosalie supported you. Don't you have any gratitude? No, you're wrong. I succeeded because of my own skills. Besides, isn't it normal for a wife to support her husband? Does a mother serve a father expecting gratitude? No, right? Rosalie served me because she loved me. It's presumptuous to expect gratitude for that, my husband argued. Enough, Kyle. I find you repulsive. We are cutting ties with you, but we will watch you until you take responsibility. Be prepared. Fine, cut ties or whatever. I have a stable job. I can live on my own. In fact, it's a relief, right, Rosalie? You can enjoy life more without me around. I'll pay whatever alimony or anything else, so don't worry." My husband laughed, seemingly without a care. Looking at him, I thought again, he doesn't understand anything, knows nothing at all. "Really? You can pay alimony? Aren't you about to be sued by your company, Kyle? A lawsuit for damages isn't cheap, you know," I retorted. "What? The company's suing me? That's ridiculous. You were bragging today, weren't you, that you're respected at Brown Trading, that your boss has high expectations, that you lead your subordinates with actions and results. But it was all lies. In reality, you've been threatening your subordinates and embezzling company money." "What? I would never do something like that. I rose through the ranks on my own merit." "Don't talk nonsense when you know nothing," my husband protested. "What you don't know, Kyle, is that all the subordinates you threatened have come forward. The company has been aware of the issue for a while. But you don't have to believe me, I'm just stating facts. It'll be interesting to see how far you fall," I explained to him in a calm tone, trying to make him understand. And the color drained from his face. If he really had no idea, he could have laughed it off. But the truth is, he was misbehaving at work too, so denying it was impossible. Seeing the realization dawn on him, he quickly turned, pleading, "Rosalie, you're right. I knew nothing. I'd only said those things because I wanted to leave. Please continue to support me if we divorce now." I stopped him right there. "Don't say anything more. The relatives are about to tear you apart, Kyle. It's too late for anything now, and it doesn't matter whether you knew or didn't know. No one will help you, and you'll get your wish to live alone. Oh, and by the way, make sure you pay for today's bill. It was your treat, wasn't it?" The moment I said this, Kyle collapsed to his knees. No one reached out to help him. Today, after threatening me, deceiving the relatives to get a free meal, he finds himself unable to get off scot-free. Afterwards, I filed for divorce, and Kyle was sued by his company. Kyle ended up incurring a significant amount of debt. The reason Kyle had no savings despite dealing with Brown Trading was that he was footing the bill for entertainment expenses with the employees. However, this entertainment was merely a pretext. In reality, Kyle was just squandering money at nightclubs. Given that Kyle, who had a high-paying job, had no savings, it's clear he had been recklessly spending his money. This was entirely Kyle's own doing, so he should have dealt with it himself. But instead, he asked for help from his in-laws and Nicholas's family. Of course, no one was willing to help. Kyle had defiantly claimed he could live on his own and even laughed off being disowned. So it's no surprise, yet Kyle continued his futile attempts and kept sending messages to my smartphone incessantly. "I was wrong. I shouldn't have cheated. I regret it. Please help me." The messages clearly showed he was desperate, but it felt like just another act. Given his history of deceit and manipulation, it's hard to believe him still. I have not blocked Kyle's contact. I've left it unblocked so that I can receive his messages. I want to see what becomes of a person who has only thought of himself and demeaned others around him. It's uncertain what will happen to Kyle now that he has hit rock bottom. One thing I do know is that unless Kyle truly repents and changes himself, he will not be able to climb out of this pit. That much I am sure of. "Rosalie, I am truly sorry for what my brother has done. It's irreparable." Nicholas apologized to me after divorcing Yasmin. The in-laws who came with him also deeply bowed their heads. "I am a failure as a parent. I can't believe I didn't see my son's true nature sooner. If only I had realized earlier, this wouldn't have happened. Kyle took advantage of your kindness, Rosalie, and did whatever he wanted. It was our responsibility to stop him. You all don't need to apologize. If anything, I am grateful. I had no one else to rely on, no parents or relatives. So thank you for always being on my side. From the beginning of our marriage, the in-laws and Nicholas have been my allies. That I was able to turn around the inherited restaurant was possible only with their support. They are genuinely kind and always smiling. They showed such fury on my behalf that was incredibly comforting to me, who is utterly alone. I will never forget this warmth for as long as I live." It all began one evening at our regular dinner table when my oldest son, Brad, announced he had something important to share with me. I'm Mary, 51 years old, and I work part-time. Mentally, I still feel youthful, though my body is showing signs of aging. My 3 sons, who have grown up to compensate for my diminishing energy, are my greatest pride. Brad, the eldest, has decided to tie the knot. While I knew he had a girlfriend, hearing about their engagement was still a pleasant surprise. "So, Brett's getting married, huh?" I guess that means you're getting old, honey. No beer for you tonight then, my husband joked. Ignoring his jest, I focused on Brad's expression. With our other sons away at college, Brad, now working, was the only one still living at home. His maturity had flourished in his years of employment, and now, with marriage on the horizon, he seemed more steadfast and reliable than ever. After my husband tearfully apologized to me, saying, "I'm sorry you're forever young and beautiful," I allowed him just one beer, according to my son. They were already discussing wedding venues and ring options, though the actual date was undecided. Brad wanted to bring his fiancée over to meet us first, which felt like a significant step. Marriage is a big milestone, I mused. I want them to have a wonderful ceremony. Though the stars of the day would be my son and his future wife, I couldn't help but feel a flutter of excitement. Perhaps I'd even treat myself to a new dress, reminiscing on my own bridal days as my husband continued to praise how radiant I looked in white. The weekend arrived, and Brad's fiancée, Alice, greeted us casually. "Hello, I'm Alice," she said, her demeanor reflecting the easy confidence of youth. Alice, a part-time worker at Brad's favorite cafe, had been captivated by him and pursued him until they began dating. As conversations lulled, my husband leaned in. "Ah, yes," and I nodded in agreement. "We have something important to share with you, Alice," my husband continued. "Brad isn't our biological son." Alice's eyes widened in surprise. "He's my nephew," I explained softly. "Brad's parents, my brother and his wife, tragically passed away when he was young. We adopted him and raised him as our own. He's like a son to us," my husband added warmly. "Please take good care of him." As Alice processed this revelation, a brief silence hung in the air before my husband swiftly changed the subject to lighter matters. "Well, let's leave the heavy stuff there. What kind of ceremony are you envisioning?" Alice smiled gratefully at the change in tone. "I'd love to wear a traditional white wedding dress, if possible." Glancing at Brad, who beamed in agreement, I couldn't help but share in their excitement. "That sounds wonderful. It's a once-in-a-lifetime event, so it should be perfect for the bride." At that point, Alice made a peculiar expression. For a moment, I thought she was glaring at me, but perhaps it was my imagination. Before I could dwell on it, her face returned to its usual expression. "And what about you, Brad? What kind of wedding do you want?" my husband asked, trying to involve our son in the wedding discussion. "Well, we don't really need your opinion," Alice immediately interjected. "What?" The three of us were taken aback, exchanging surprised looks. Alice seemed puzzled by our reactions, as if she couldn't understand what was wrong with her statement. "But didn't you say yourself, Auntie, that it needs to be perfect for the bride? The groom is just a bonus." "I'll have it my way," Alice asserted confidently, her smile radiant. Brad was left speechless, and I was momentarily stunned by her addressing me as Auntie. But shouldn't Brad's wishes also be considered? "Don't worry, leave everything to me, and it'll be the best wedding ever. Just make sure you work hard and contribute the funds, Brad." Alice continued with unstoppable energy and audacity, leaving us all speechless. What a remarkable girl, I thought, nodding in agreement. A few days later, both families met at a nice restaurant. This time, my husband's mother was there too. She hadn't been able to join us last time because she was at an adult daycare center. Despite using a cane, she was quite energetic. "Sorry for the delay. Traffic was a nightmare," she apologized as she arrived. Alice spoke in a casual manner, even with my husband's mother, whom she had only met once before. In the background, I noticed Alice's parents shyly waving before taking their seats. The atmosphere was somewhat awkward, with little conversation as we quietly ate our meals. Just as I was about to initiate some small talk, Alice suddenly spoke up. "Granny, do you have trouble walking?" "That's right, dear. Old age has taken a toll on my legs," my mother-in-law replied. "Well, I absolutely refuse to care for you," Alice declared out of the blue, causing a moment of stunned silence. Someone went, "Hell, it was probably my mother-in-law, but it might have been me," I said, wanting to clarify. "I have no intention of caring for any of you. Auntie, you're not my mother, so you're a stranger. And while Uncle might be related, he's not my father. I won't look after any of you," Alice asserted boldly. "Hey, Alice." Brad attempted to intervene, but she wouldn't relent. "And I definitely won't be calling you Dad or Mom, so remember that," Alice added firmly. Glancing at Alice's parents, I was surprised to see them nodding in agreement. "Well, it's true that Brad isn't our biological son, but we've raised him as one," My husband tried to interject. Hush, Uncle, Alice cut him off sharply. Okay, I'm sorry. My husband fell silent after the rebuke. At that moment, the gentle sound of a fork being placed down resonated. Is that so? Came a calm but firm statement. I glanced at my mother-in-law. She appeared composed, yet her underlying fury was palpable. They may not be their biological parents, but they've raised them with more love than many real parents would. That's not something outsiders should meddle with. My mother-in-law spoke with authority. I don't care what you say. I'm not doing any caregiving, Alice retorted defiantly. Her words infuriated me, but I held my tongue as my mother-in-law continued to speak. I'm not expecting anyone to take care of me. I know I'm old, but I don't want to burden my daughter-in-law, so I mostly use the facilities every day. Oh, really? Responded my mother-in-law. I've already transferred my assets to the couple as gifts while I'm still alive. They can use that money for the facilities or whatever they want, so you won't have to lift a finger. Well, isn't that nice? My mother-in-law replied with irritation evident in her tone. Even when her son tried to placate her, it seemed to have little effect. This discussion ends here. It's time to go home, my mother-in-law stated firmly, bringing the conversation to an abrupt close. With that single statement from my mother-in-law, the meeting came to an end. Women have become stronger these days. Perhaps that's the way of the world now. The rest of us, born in the 60s, returned home with mixed feelings. A few days later, my husband and Brad were at work, my mother-in-law was at the adult home, and I was alone at home on my day off from my part-time job when the phone rang. Oh, hey there, Auntie. Alice's voice surprised me when I picked up the phone. Auntie, can you not come to the wedding? Alice's request caught me off guard. What? I exclaimed in surprise at her unexpected request. You're not Brad's biological parent. Technically, you're his aunt. Since there's no blood relation, you're essentially a stranger. Strangers shouldn't come to weddings. But what about Brad? He wants us, his parents, to be at the ceremony, I pleaded. He doesn't matter. I'm planning the wedding my way. At the ceremony, I'll prepare a letter to his deceased parents that will surely move everyone, Alice insisted. That's not how it works. Brad's biological parents were important to him, but he considers us his real parents. That thought brought tears to her eyes before. I explained desperately. If you really want to attend, you'll have to be very generous with your gift. You received an inheritance from your mom, right? So, $10,000 is the bare minimum, if that's the case. I might let you sit in the far corner of the relative seats. How could you say such a thing? If you don't like it, fine. Don't come to the wedding. Oh, but you still have to give a gift. Wire transfer or registered mail is fine. Bye, Alice declared curtly before hanging up. The phone call felt like a whirlwind, leaving me unsettled. That night, Brad was working late due to overtime, and my husband was out for drinks. It was just my mother-in-law and me at home, contemplating the situation in silence. Looks like Alice doesn't like me, I remarked with concern. That's a problem, sighed my mother-in-law. Let's make her like us then, I suggested plainly. Simple and clear. If she dislikes us, we'll make ourselves likable, my mother-in-law agreed. And so, we stayed up late into the night, plotting various strategies. The sight of us grinning with satisfaction and saying, "Perfect, let's do this," left my husband dumbfounded when he returned home, but that's another story. The next day at lunch, when I called Alice and told her we had something for her, she came over promptly. Here to collect some cash, I joked as she arrived. Shaking my head at her assumption, I pulled out something. "What's this?" Alice asked, puzzled. "It's a cupcake I made," my mother-in-law chimed in with a smile. "I heard you don't have grandparents. Try some of this. It's a super traditional one." "I don't want it," Alice protested. "Don't be shy. Here you go," my mother-in-law insisted, pushing the treat towards her. Alice resisted, but my mother-in-law's assertiveness prevailed as she managed to get the cupcake into Alice's mouth. "Well, that's gross. Why is this so salty?" Alice exclaimed, quickly washing it down with the iced tea we had served. "Salty? That's odd. It shouldn't be," I remarked, taking a bite myself and grimacing. We had entrusted everything to my mother-in-law, including the preparation and cleanup. But who could have predicted such a basic mistake? The cupcake plan had failed, but we remained undeterred. "That's all right. Let's move on to the next one," I said with determination. "I have a gift for you." Wedding money? A gift card? Nope. Alice eyed the slightly larger paper bag I handed her, disappointment creasing her forehead as she inspected it. What's this? It's a dress. I hope you like it. It's gross. This isn't my taste at all. I would rather have money. Money? Alice bluntly stated her preference, making me reconsider giving it to her. I had carefully chosen the dress, thinking it would suit her well. Not having a daughter, I wasn't entirely familiar with current fashion trends for young women. Despite consulting with the store clerk, it seemed my efforts had fallen short. A real letdown. Another plan had failed, and instead of bringing us closer, it seemed to worsen things. That's enough. I don't want anything else. Just give me the cash, Alice demanded. A cash gift truly captures the spirit of celebration. Don't you want to celebrate your son? Of course. I do. Then I'll give it to my son. The wife should manage the husband's money. That's only natural. Just hurry up and hand it over, old woman. As Alice spoke, her true nature emerged, leaving me feeling saddened. Who are you calling an old woman? I'm still spry. Just by seeing spry, actually you're a granny, Alice continued brazenly. While I wondered how to respond, we were suddenly interrupted by a familiar voice saying, I'm home. Brad, wait, what happened at work? Alice panicked, clearly worried about being overheard. We went bankrupt, Brad replied listlessly. Bankrupt? The company's gone under. Alice's misunderstanding echoed through the room, followed by stunned silence. It wasn't just Alice who was surprised. My mother-in-law and I were both taken aback. Alice grabbed my son's shoulders and started shaking him. What does bankrupt mean? Jobless, penniless. What are we going to do about the wedding? I'm sorry, it'll have to wait, Brad replied, his voice devoid of energy. Releasing her grip from my son, Alice cried out, then how am I supposed to pay the damages? It wasn't just Alice's words that shocked us. My mother-in-law and I were stunned. My son being jobless was one thing, but I couldn't keep up with everything that was happening. Damages? Ah, never mind. Just give me the gift money quickly, Alice said, no longer caring if my son was present, holding out her hand to me. Alice, could you give us an explanation? My mother-in-law interjected. Shut up. Just give me the money, Alice snapped. It's you who needs to shut up, young lady. Explain yourself. My mother-in-law's tone suddenly turned harsh, catching Alice off guard. Under the watchful gaze of my mother-in-law and me, Alice began to speak in a weak voice. Apparently, Alice had been having an affair with her boss at her part-time job. Moreover, the man was married, and his wife found out, demanding damages. Alice had no money to pay, so she devised a plan to marry my son. She calculated that if they married, she would receive a hefty sum in gift money and planned to have my son pay for all the wedding costs while she kept the gift money for herself. My mother-in-law and I were speechless. We were angry that she had used my son, but we were also astounded by how she didn't think she had done anything wrong throughout the entire conversation. I've already settled things with my boss. Once I pay the damages, it'll be over. That's why I'm going through with the marriage. Give me the gift money. It's fortunate the truth came out before the wedding, but I didn't know what to say to her. As I pondered, I heard a low, muffled voice. Don't make decisions on your own. Looking up, I saw my son Brad glaring at Alice, his face filled with anger. Brad was usually so calm. He had never raised his voice at her before. Alice appeared startled. So what if it's over? You're not even trying to pay the damages yourself. You were planning to use our marriage for your own gain. You haven't shown any remorse. Do you really love me? Of course I love you. That's why I want to get married. Then pay the damages yourself. Show some sincerity. But, Alice tried to hold onto my son, but he coldly pushed her away. Either way, we can't get married until I find a new job. Can you wait until then? Alice was speechless. If she truly loved him, she would have been willing to wait and support him. But those words didn't come from her. That's enough, Brad finally said in frustration. I never even liked you to begin with. I thought you could bring in some money, but I don't need a jobless, penniless man. At last, Alice revealed her true feelings. Perhaps that was what she had been thinking all along. With those words, she shouted and stormed out of the house. I wondered if Brad was truly okay with this. I noticed him shaking. When I turned around, ready to comfort him, I noticed something unexpected. Laughter. My son burst out laughing suddenly. Had the shock broken him? It was a lie. Huh? A lie? The company's not bankrupt. Business is doing well. I just came back to pick up something I forgot. It turned out the bankruptcy was a ruse. My son had returned during his lunch break to retrieve something he'd left behind. Spotting us together and hearing our conversation, he grew suspicious of Alice's insistence on money and set a trap for her. I'd heard that a person's true nature shows when they face joblessness and financial trouble. I wanted to test it. The result was enlightening, to say the least. "Do you still love her?" I asked cautiously. My son looked a bit melancholy. I loved her enough to want to marry her, but sometimes love fades in an instant. Maybe I didn't love Alice as deeply as I thought. Perhaps calling off the engagement was for the best. I exchanged a knowing glance with my mother-in-law, and we both found ourselves laughing at the situation. As for what happened next, we later learned that the cafe where Alice worked part-time had closed down. Apparently, the manager, who was Alice's affair partner, had to sell the cafe due to a messy divorce and hefty alimony payments. This information came from another regular customer at the cafe. According to Brad, Alice had no means to pay the alimony herself and had to rely on her parents. They were furious with her and ultimately kicked her out of the house. She ended up living in a rundown apartment and took up a night job. Years later, when my two younger sons had started their careers, Brad was preparing for his marriage. His partner was a kind-hearted woman. "Thank you for raising Brad into a wonderful man. I'm not much, but I'm looking forward to getting to know you both better," she told us, even knowing the truth. Moved to tears by her gratitude, both my husband and I were deeply touched. "Seem as emotional." Brad smiled broadly. "Congratulations, Brad. I'm sure your parents in heaven are also happy," I said to him. "Yes, but I'm happiest when my parents here with me are happy," Brad replied softly. His words brought tears to my eyes once more. "Oh dear, here come the tears again. You're crying too much. You've aged and gotten so tearful," my husband teased. I turned to him and declared, "Well, no beer for you tonight then." My mother-in-law scrutinized the allergy test results with a piercing gaze. As soon as she confirmed our child's blood type, she erupted, "This is outrageous. This child can't be our son's. We all share the same blood type." She crumpled the test results in a fit of rage and hurled them to the floor. "I had my suspicions ever since you announced your pregnancy. You tricked our son into this." Calmly, I picked up the crumpled paper from the floor and examined it. Then I looked up and said, "Yes, mother-in-law, he's not your son's child. My name is Kay Forrester, 34 years old. I live with my husband, Jake, in a rented apartment in New York. Our relationship began as a workplace romance, and despite his busy schedule, Jake is a kind husband who actively helps with household chores. Even today, when I came home, Jake had washed the frying pan and dishes from breakfast. Welcome back. Try not to push yourself too hard with the overtime. You won't be able to handle it, okay?" he said. "I'm home," I replied. "Yeah, I know. But I can't just ignore it. I can't help it." While changing into my loungewear in the bedroom, I caught a whiff of a delicious aroma wafting from the kitchen. Tonight's dinner was my favorite, Jake's special fried chicken. I grabbed a can of beer from the fridge and noticed a big circle around the 10th on the calendar. "Oh, I completely forgot. Next Friday is our 7th wedding anniversary. Let's go out for dinner. I feel like having French for a change." "I thought you might say that. I've already made a reservation at a French restaurant in Manhattan," Jake replied. "Really? Thank you. I'm so excited." As I savored a mouthful of fried chicken, I found myself reflecting deeply on the 7 years that had passed since our wedding. We still don't have children. I had always thought that pregnancy would naturally follow marriage, but even after 1 year, 2 years, it didn't happen. My sister, who married 4 years after me, now has 2 kids, and my friends seem to be getting pregnant one after another. In the early years, I wasn't desperate and could genuinely celebrate the pregnancy announcements of those close to me. But now, even hearing about celebrities' pregnancies stings. I despise this part of myself that can't wholeheartedly rejoice in others' happiness. Why will we have a baby? My mobile search history was filled with keywords about pregnancy. Whenever I had a moment to myself, my thoughts would inevitably turn to having a baby. My mother-in-law only added to the stress. It seems the concept of taboo is foreign to her. She barged into our apartment the other day, making sarcastic comments about our childlessness and suggesting divorce. "So, when are you planning to get pregnant?" "I'm tired of waiting," she demanded. "Well, This isn't something we can control. I'm doing my best, I responded. Don't you feel sorry for Jake because he can't become a father? Actually, I also want to see Jake become a father soon. If you really feel that way, why don't you divorce him? I believe there's someone more suitable for Jake. If he marries a healthy woman who can bear children, he'd become a father in no time, she retorted. Her words stung, and though I tried to stay calm, the frustration and sadness were overwhelming. Facing such harsh words with a straight face, I managed to get by all this time thanks to Jake and my father-in-law. They've always stood up for me, often appearing more exasperated with my mother-in-law's obsession with wanting grandchildren than I was. To maintain my peace, I kept a safe distance from her, avoiding unnecessary contact and only acknowledging her on Mother's Day and her birthday. One night, as usual, Jake and I were watching TV after dinner. I had been feeling a little feverish since morning, so I decided to check my temperature. It was slightly elevated at 99.5 degrees Fahrenheit. I often feel under the weather before my period, but when I checked my period tracking app, I realized my period was late this month. Hurriedly, I retrieved a pregnancy test from the bathroom cabinet. To my surprise, it showed 2 distinct lines indicating a positive result. Jake, look at this, I said, holding up the test. What does this mean? He asked, eyes wide. It means I'm pregnant, I replied, smile spreading across my face. We're finally going to have a baby. Overwhelmed with joy, I burst into tears on the spot, reflecting on how much time and money we had spent to reach this moment. After verifying the pregnancy test result multiple times, Jake hugged me tightly. Thank you for giving up alcohol, smoking, and going to the sauna. Starting today, you're free to enjoy them again. Nah, compared to the effort you've put in, my sacrifices are nothing. I'll hold off on the drinks until after you've safely given birth. I'm already looking forward to that celebratory drink, Jake replied with a smile. A few days later, we visited the gynecologist, where the pregnancy was confirmed. There's a baby in my belly, I marveled, experiencing the strange yet warm feeling for the first time. I didn't care about the baby's gender. I just wished for it to be born healthy. I can still vividly recall the moment when I first felt my child's movement in my womb. Every day, Jake would touch my belly and talk to our baby. Hey, it's Daddy. Can't wait to meet you. Hey, no, it's too early for you to be born. I'd remind him playfully. Right, my bad. You need to stay in the belly a little longer, he'd respond, laughing. Now, as I enter my 8th month of pregnancy, I feel a mixture of anticipation and excitement. I started my maternity leave and settled into a leisurely routine. One day, while watching a movie with Jake at home, I felt a sudden, rapid soaking sensation accompanied by a popping sound. I instantly realized my water had broken. I called the general hospital where I was scheduled to give birth, and they instructed us to come in immediately. We rushed there by taxi, my excitement outweighing any nervousness. I was finally about to meet my child. Upon arriving at the hospital, labor pains began, marking the start of a long and arduous process. Hours passed without the baby descending, and I reached my physical and mental limits. My screams echoed through the hospital. I can't do this anymore. It hurts. It hurts. 15 minutes later, our baby finally arrived. You did well, Jake said, tears streaming down his face as he patted my head. He's adorable, our baby. The newborn baby was so tiny and fragile that I felt I might break it if I touched it. It was the most precious sight I had ever seen. Just a moment ago, this little one was inside my belly. As I held my baby's tiny, soft finger, a tear rolled down my cheek. I was certain I could do anything for this child. Despite being born prematurely due to my water breaking early and having a low birth weight, our child grew healthily. Time flew by, and before we knew it, it was time to prepare for preschool. Hey, how about going to the shopping center next Saturday? We need to start buying stuff for preschool, I suggested. What do we need to get? Jake asked. You know, a backpack, water bottle, lunchbox, that sort of stuff, I replied. Don't they serve lunch at the preschool? He inquired. I think it depends on the place, right? Shouldn't we get an allergy test done before starting preschool? Ha! But we'll be packing lunch, right? Yes, but they provide snacks at preschool. Both of us have food allergies, don't we? We need to check if that has been passed on. You're right, it's a concern. Yeah, let's take our child for an allergy test soon. The following week, we took our child to the hospital for an allergy test. There was a section of the questionnaire asking if we wanted to check the blood type as well. Since the blood type check was free, we decided to go for it. The test results would be sent to us by email later. The world has indeed become very convenient. A few days later, when I returned from shopping, there was an envelope in our mailbox. The allergy test results had arrived. After washing my hands, I immediately opened the envelope to check the results. As expected, our child has a few food allergies. I felt a bit guilty about this, but it's okay. Jake and I have learned a lot about managing food allergies. There are many alternative and allergy-friendly foods available, and some children's allergic reactions lessen as they grow. I put the test results on the refrigerator door with a magnet so Jake could check them later. All right, I think I'll start preparing dinner, I said to myself. As I put away the groceries, the doorbell rang. Checking the footage of the front porch, I found my in-laws standing there unexpectedly. Frustrated by their unannounced visit, I opened the front door. Hello, father-in-law, mother-in-law. It's been a while. Okay, we're sorry for dropping by unannounced. I told Lisa that we should have informed you in advance, my father-in-law said. We don't need to inform anyone when visiting our own son's house. Now, please let us see our grandchild, my mother-in-law declared, barging in and spreading out the children's clothes and toys she was holding all over the living room. All high-end stuff, she noted. My mother-in-law is a brand fanatic, the complete opposite of me, as I have no interest in luxury brands. I started boiling water to make tea for my in-laws. Wait a minute, Kay, what are you doing? My mother-in-law asked. Oh, I'm just about to serve tea. Please wait a moment, I replied. I don't want to drink such cheap tea. Don't you have any other beverages? My mother-in-law said, striding confidently over to the fridge. But then she froze in front of it, her gaze fixed on the paper stuck to its surface. What's this? Oh, we thought of having an allergy test done before our child starts preschool, I explained. That's not what I meant. I'm talking about this blood type, she insisted. Ha! I followed her gaze to the blood type next to her child's name. It read type A. My mother-in-law's face turned beet red as she started yelling at me. Okay, you are the worst. Calm down, please, mother-in-law, I urged, trying to diffuse the tension. How can I stay calm? This is not our son's child. All of us are type O. With a burst of anger, my mother-in-law crumpled up the test results paper and threw it on the floor. I knew something was off when you announced your pregnancy. Okay, you cheated. I want you to divorce Jake. Of course, we'll be seeking compensation. I calmly picked up the crumpled test result paper from the floor, and then I was certain of something. Actually, mother-in-law, it's the other way around. Jake is not your son. Jake has type O blood. Upon hearing this, my mother-in-law became enraged, claiming it was impossible because both she and my father-in-law have type O blood, accusing me of lying. She insisted that their son should also have type O blood as per what she heard at the time of his birth. My mother-in-law wasn't aware that a newborn's blood type is not reliable and can change as they grow. Here's the proof, I said, seizing the moment to show her a piece of paper. It was the results of a blood test that my husband Jake had taken as part of our infertility treatment. His blood type unmistakably was A. Seeing this, my mother-in-law turned pale and silently sat down on a chair. She began to sweat coldly, obviously rattled. My usually quiet father-in-law spoke up. What does this mean, Lisa? There's a reason behind this. A reason? Are you going to make excuses? Stop messing around. This was the first time I'd seen my father-in-law explode with such anger. I quickly told my child to go into the other room. Even if they couldn't understand yet, I didn't want them hearing this messy conversation. After a few minutes of tense silence, my mother-in-law, seemingly resigned, started to tell the truth through her tears. It was a revelation that dated back 30 years. Early in their marriage, my father-in-law often embarked on long business trips abroad, a necessity of his job in a trading company. Despite the circumstances, he had no choice but to accept these assignments. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law, feeling isolated after moving away from her hometown and lacking nearby friends, found solace in an affair born of loneliness. Shockingly, that other man was a junior colleague my father-in-law held in high regard. It was a revelation that shattered the illusion of our family's history. Jake, unwittingly at the center of it all, was the child born from the affair between my mother-in-law and her lover. How would Jake react to this bombshell? My worry for him consumed me. Yet to my surprise, Jake seemed oddly unfazed by the news. He never verbalized it, but his calm demeanor suggested he may have known the truth all along, perhaps from the subtle clues that hinted at his non-biological connection to his parents. Since the day the shocking truth was revealed, I haven't crossed paths with my mother-in-law at all. There was one email from her, but I deleted it without a second thought. Later, my father-in-law, understandably outraged by the decades-long deception, presented divorce papers to my mother-in-law. It was a necessary step. With her history of infidelity, my mother-in-law had no grounds to refuse, and the divorce was finalized smoothly. My mother-in-law, who had lived a life of luxury as a stay-at-home wife fully dependent on my father-in-law, now seems to be grappling with the reality of making ends meet. I wonder if she's considering finding employment. I ponder if there's a place where she can start working. Well, it's none of my business. When I think about what my mother-in-law did to my father-in-law and the hurtful words she directed at me, there's no room for sympathy. On the bright side, the relationship between my father-in-law and my husband Jake is still strong. It was all my mother-in-law's doing, and Jake is blameless. Even without a biological tie, after 30 years of raising him, he's truly my son, my father-in-law assured Jake. Despite the divorce from my mother-in-law, my father-in-law continues to show kindness not only to Jake but also to me and our child. He takes us out to eat once a month and even brings back souvenirs from his trips for us. Previously, I used to wake up in the morning dreading what unpleasantness the day would bring. But now, I wake up with anticipation, wondering what wonderful things will happen. My world is beginning to brighten. Another new day unfolds. Today, as I wake up, my husband and child prepare breakfast, pack lunches, and change clothes. There's so much to do, surrounded by my beloved family